Welcome to this video on wheel removal and installation. While it might seem fairly simple to remove a wheel and reinstall on a vehicle, there's actually several steps that sometimes get missed that can cause problems later on. This video is going to discuss all of the proper steps for removing and installing a wheel safely. If the vehicle has a wheel cover, gently remove it by prying around the perimeter in multiple places until it comes off. Be careful, as these are usually made of plastic and can crack. While the wheel is still on the ground, make sure that you loosen each of the nuts by hand. In this case, I am using the wheel wrench that came with the vehicle. However, you could use other tools to loosen this, such as an impact gun, or you could use a breaker bar like this one here. The point is to loosen the nuts before the vehicle's wheel is raised, as once the wheel is raised, it can be very challenging to remove the nuts as the wheels will spin. Even with an impact gun, if they're not coming loose, it can be challenging. If you do use an impact gun, work around in a star pattern. Make sure that you do not let your hand rest on the socket while it's spinning, and gently remove each nut. If they are not coming loose, go back to using a breaker bar. Sometimes the wheel assembly is very hard to remove due to corrosion. To aid in the process, tap around the wheel with a dead blow hammer like this on the rim, where the rim meets the tire, or you can use a block of wood with a larger hammer such as a mallet, a ball peen hammer, or a sledgehammer, and continue working around the perimeter until it comes off. I left a nut on so the wheel wouldn't pop off completely and then bounce out of the way, so that I can remove the nut and take the wheel off, inspecting the corrosion afterwards. Here we can see on the hub mating flange of this drum brake all the corrosion that kept the wheel in place, and the same was true for the front with this disc brake. We need to remove all of the corrosion on the mating surfaces, including the wheel side, without actually thinning out the metal or removing excessive material, so we use discs like this that prevent us from thinning the metal out. Work your way around the hub mating surfaces and anywhere where the wheel and the hub will meet to remove any of that excessive corrosion. If that corrosion is not removed and the wheel is reinstalled, that will actually create a little bit of a barrier between the hub and the wheel, and that thickness of the corrosion can actually cause the wheel to go on a little crooked, causing vibrations noticeable by the driver through the steering wheel. Once it's cleaned up and looks nice like this, then we can go ahead and apply some anti-seize to prevent the hub and wheel from corroding together for the next person that has to take the wheel off. Once they have been applied, we can then install the wheel back on. To apply the anti-seize, apply a thin layer around all those mating surfaces that you ground, making sure that we do not apply any anti-seize to the wheel studs. We do not want anti-seize on the studs anywhere, and we definitely do not want any anti-seize on the brake friction surfaces, such as the face of this brake rotor right here. As we go around, make sure all the bare metal is covered, especially areas where you've recently ground, as those will be prone to corroding very quickly. If you have an aluminum wheel, this is also very important, as the aluminum wheel will corrode to the steel hub through galvanic corrosion, which can be very challenging to deal with, much like the steel here. Once we have everything applied, make sure you go back over it to ensure everything is even and thin, and then you can install the wheel. To install the wheel, grab the wheel, set it in position, and align the holes before lifting it in place. The holes should align with the studs to make lifting and sliding the wheel on a little bit easier. Once the wheel slid over the studs, then we can go ahead and apply the nuts. It's usually a good idea to put one nut on the top and one nut on the bottom first, and that will help keep the wheel centered on the hub. Some wheels are hub-centric, meaning the hole in the center of the wheel will sit very snugly on the hub, and if you don't have the wheel sitting on correctly, it will go on crooked and you can damage the wheel when you tighten the nuts afterwards. If you're dealing with a European vehicle that has wheel bolts instead of nuts, line the holes up, grab a bolt, and then slide the bolt in the hole and gently start to thread it by hand. You can use a tool like this to tighten it afterwards. Just make sure that you've always started the nuts by hand first. Once we've completed that task and lowered the vehicle, we can then go ahead and use the torque wrench. Set the torque wrench to whatever specifications are required for that vehicle. The torque specifications can be found in the vehicle's owner's manual as seen here, or the specifications can be found in the vehicle manufacturer's service information. It will also depict any particular pattern for tightening the nuts, which is usually a star-shaped pattern. So we'll go ahead and use the torque wrench set to that specification and then tightened in the star-shaped pattern going across one side to the other. As you go over each nut, you should hear a click sound. That will indicate that the torque wrench has reached the desired value, and then continue across to the next nut and work your way around. After all the nuts have been torqued, you can definitely go back and double check each one going around the wheel, and they should each make a click immediately when you put the torque wrench on them, verifying that you have indeed reached the correct torque value. If you're finding that on the initial installation with the torque wrench, everything is clicking instantly, then the wheel nuts may be over torqued. Therefore, you'll have to go back, loosen each nut a little bit, and then use the torque wrench to finish tightening them. If the wheel had a wheel cover on it beforehand, make sure that we reinstall the wheel cover in the correct orientation. The holes should line up the holes for the nuts if they are present, and more importantly, we need to make sure we line up the hole for the valve stem, as we can see here in the top right corner, and then gently press the wheel cover into place. A rubber mallet may be used if necessary. Also note that some vehicles use aftermarket or locking wheel nuts, in which case you may need the correct tool to use that particular nut. Lastly, note that the wheel nut torque should be rechecked after a short period of time where the vehicle has been driven through some heating and cooling cycles of the wheel. And this can be anywhere from about 25 to 100 kilometers. Retorquing in this range will ensure that the wheel nut does not come loose and the wheel does not fall off. Thank you very much for watching the video.